If you're a parent, or really if you've been around a teenager lately, you've probably worried about how much time they spend glued to their phone. It's this constant modern anxiety, right? We're always counting the hours, setting timers. But what if we're all missing the point? What if the clock isn't the real enemy here? What if we've been measuring the wrong thing this entire time? So let's really dig into this because a ton of new research is suggesting our obsession with hours and minutes might be totally misdirected. The real question isn't just how long our teens are online, it's about what that online world is built to do to their brains. And to get it, we have to start with the sheer scale of all this. Get this, 95%. That's how many American teens between the ages of 13 and 17 use social media. I mean, that's not some niche hobby. It's a fundamental part of being a teenager today. It's basically as universal as going to high school. And it gets even more intense from there. More than a third of those kids, they're not just checking in once in a while. They report using social media almost constantly. Think about that. For so many teens, this isn't just a habit anymore. It's become their default state of being. So what happens when a technology gets that deeply woven into a young person's life? Well, that brings us right to the heart of the matter. The problem we're up against isn't really about a teen's bad time management skills. Nope. It's about intentional, deliberate design. The takeaway here? It's not the clock, it's the code. This is so crucial to understand. Apps like TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, they aren't just innocent, neutral tools for connecting. They are incredibly sophisticated systems that have been meticulously engineered with one main goal in mind: to capture your attention and to hold on to it for as long as humanly possible. And there's a name for this. It's called persuasive technology. It's designed specifically to exploit what scientists call neurodevelopmental vulnerabilities. Basically, the teenage brain is in this wild, rapid growth phase. The parts that control emotion, impulse, and social rewards, they're firing on all cylinders. And these platforms are built to tap directly into those vulnerabilities. So how do they do it? It all comes down to this: the dopamine feedback loop. Seriously, just think of it like a little slot machine you carry around in your pocket. You post something, or you just scroll, and you have no idea what's coming next. Maybe you'll get 1 like, maybe you'll get 100. Maybe the next video will be boring, maybe it'll be amazing. That unpredictability gives the brain's reward center a little hit of dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical. And that little rush reinforces the behavior, making you want to pull the lever again and again and again. It creates a powerful, compulsive cycle. Okay, so we've established that these things are designed to be addictive. So what? How does that actually translate into real, measurable impacts on a teen's life? Well, once you see the design, you start to realize the consequences aren't accidents, they're features. This is where we see the big shift in thinking. For years, the public conversation has been all about total screen time, but the more alarming science is pointing somewhere else entirely. It's pointing to addictive use patterns. It's not about the number of hours you're online. It's about the psychological inability to get offline that really predicts the most serious harm. And just how severe is that harm? Well, major studies found that teens who showed signs of addictive social media use had a 2 to 3 times greater risk of suicidal behaviors. And the kicker? The total amount of time they spent online had basically no connection to that risk. Let that sink in. It's not the time, it's the compulsion. That is an absolutely stunning finding. And the damage isn't just in that one tragic, extreme outcome. It's much broader. We see clear links to depression and anxiety, often driven by just passively scrolling and constantly comparing yourself to others. This hits young girls, especially between 11 and 13, really hard. We see huge disruptions in sleep for any teen using these apps heavily. And we see this intense self-criticism, again, primarily affecting girls because of the relentless focus on appearance. And that's a really critical point to make here. The experience of being a teenager on social media is not universal. The algorithms, the social pressures, they create wildly different environments for different kids. And one of the biggest dividing lines is gender. I mean, the numbers here are just so stark. A full quarter of teen girls say that social media has actively harmed their mental health. For boys, it's 14%. Still not great, but a significantly lower number. So what on earth is driving that gap? Well, it seems to come down to the type of pressure. For girls, the algorithms often amplify things like relational aggression, digital drama, social exclusion, and that non-stop crushing pressure from appearance comparisons.
For boys, it's a different kind of toxin. They're often flooded with content that pushes what researchers are calling problematic digital masculinity, stuff that encourages stoicism and makes it seem weak to express any kind of real emotion or vulnerability.
Now look, it would be a huge mistake to paint this whole picture with a dark brush, because we have to acknowledge that for a lot of kids, these platforms aren't just a source of stress. They can be a genuine, essential lifeline.
The huge majority of teens, 74%, say social media actually makes them feel more connected to their friends' lives. And think about kids who might feel alone in their real-world communities, like LGBTQ teens or neurodiverse teens. For them, these online spaces can be an absolute godsend, a place where they finally find people who get them.
But here's a really worrying trend. That feeling of support, it seems to be fading, and fast. In just 2 years, the share of teens who felt they could find supportive people on these platforms dropped a staggering 15 points. It really suggests that the negative parts of the design, the addiction, the comparison, might be starting to drown out the good stuff.
So, what do we do about all this? If the problem is baked into the very code of these platforms, if it's systemic, then the solution has to be systemic too. It's time to stop blaming the kids and start looking at the machine itself.
Here's the bottom line. Asking a teenager to just have more willpower against a billion-dollar system designed by the world's smartest engineers to hook them is a completely unfair fight. It's absurd. Setting time limits is like trying to bail out the ocean with a teaspoon. It's just not going to work. And look, this isn't just some fringe opinion. The nation's top doctor, the U.S. Surgeon General, has been crystal clear about this. The advisory states that the fundamental responsibility lies with the tech companies, not the parents, not the schools, not the teens, the companies that build and profit from these environments. And this isn't some vague wish list. There are very specific, concrete recommendations on the table. Things like making companies finally share their data so we can actually study what's going on, making the highest safety settings the default for kids, not something you have to hunt for, and getting rid of features like infinite scroll and autoplay that exist for no other reason than to keep you glued to the screen. These are calls for a fundamental redesign.
And that really leaves us with one final massive question. For a long time, we've treated social media companies like they're the phone company, just a neutral platform, not responsible for the conversations happening on it. But what if we started treating them more like a car company, as the makers of a product that, if it's designed poorly, can be inherently dangerous and needs to meet basic safety standards before it's ever sold to the public, let alone our kids? That right there is the huge paradigm shift that this entire debate is hurtling towards.